Hey guys, this is Hemant from Edureka. Today's session is going to be all about AWS Lambda. So without making any further ado, let's move on to today's agenda to understand what all will be covered today. So we'll start off today's session by discussing the main services in the AWS Compute Domain. After that, we're going to see why AWS Lambda is as a separate service. We're going to discuss what AWS Lambda actually is, and then we'll move on to the part where we'll see how you can use AWS Lambda using the AWS SDKs. Once we're done with that, I'll teach you guys how you can integrate your SDK with the Eclipse IDE. And in the end, we'll be doing a demo. So let me quickly show you guys how we'll be using AWS Lambda in today's demonstration. So guys, this is a website that I created which is hosted on the local host. Now what this website does is it uploads a file onto the S3 file system. Now once the file is uploaded, it sends me a mail regarding that. Now that mail is generated by AWS Lambda. Now let me quickly show you how that mail actually looks like. So let me upload a file over here. So let file be this. I click on open. And before uploading image, I'll show you my inbox. So as of now, I don't have any emails, as you can see, right? So what I'll do is I'll click on upload image. Now it says S3 upload complete. Now what this website does is it will upload my file, it will rename the file according to the system time so that there is no conflict in the name of the object, right? So whatever file that I've uploaded right now will be uploaded in this bucket. So if I refresh this, you can see that there's a file over here, right? So this file has now been renamed, right? And I also have an email over here which says AWS SES test, right? So if I click on this email, I can see that I have got a mail from this address saying that an object has been uploaded. The name of the object is this, the size of the object is this, the bucket name is this, and it was last modified on 12/31 UTC. All right, so let me quickly compare whether this file name is the same. So it's 748 and it says 748 here as well. Awesome. Now the next cool thing that you can do over here is you can move this file to some other folder. So all you have to do is you will reply to this mail by saying move. You click on send. Now when I send move to this email address that I've configured in my code, what it does is it will basically move this file from this bucket to some other bucket. So let me quickly refresh it and see whether my file has been moved. So as you can see, my bucket is now empty. Now let me go back. So basically my file was there in Edureka demo. Now it will be there in quarantine demo bucket. So as you can see, 748 file has now been moved to the quarantine demo by simply writing a mail over here which says move. So we'll be creating this demo today, right? So guys, this is our agenda for today. Are we clear with it? All right, so Dustin says yes. Others, Kevin is clear as well. Michelle, Bibek, Ayushi. All right, guys. So since most of you are clear, let's move on to the first topic of today's discussion. That is the AWS Compute Domain. So the main services under this domain are EC2, Elastic Beanstalk, and AWS Lambda. Now among these three, the most important service is EC2. So EC2 is basically just like a raw server. It is like your personal computer that you're working on remotely, right? So it can install any kind of operating system of your choice, which is supported by the AWS infrastructure. And then you can use it in any manner as you want. You can configure it to become a web server. You can configure it to become a worker tier environment, anything. Our next service is Elastic Beanstalk, which is an automated version of EC2. So with Elastic Beanstalk, you don't get the access to the operating system, but you still have a control over the configuration of your system. So you can choose what kind of instance you want to launch, right? So Elastic Beanstalk is used to deploy an application. So basically you just upload your code and your application is deployed on the AWS infrastructure, right? So this is what Elastic Beanstalk is all about. Then we have the AWS Lambda service. So the Lambda service is again an automated version of EC2 wherein you don't get the access to the operating system. With AWS Lambda, you don't even have the choice to choose what kind of configuration you want with your server, right? So with AWS Lambda, you just have to upload your code and it executes. It's that simple. But then why do we have an AWS Lambda service when we have Elastic Beanstalk? So let's understand that. So AWS Lambda, like I told you guys, it is an automated version of EC2, just like Elastic Beanstalk. But then with AWS Lambda, you can only execute background tasks, right? You cannot deploy an application. So AWS Lambda is not used to deploy an application. It is used to execute background tasks. Other than that, like I told you guys, you don't have to choose the configuration in AWS Lambda. You don't have to choose what kind of servers you want. Depending on your workload, the kind of configuration, the server configuration is assigned to you, right? So this is why we use AWS Lambda. But then let's go on to the definition part and see what AWS Lambda actually is. So according to its definition, it's a serverless compute service because you're not choosing the servers, right? You're not choosing what kind of configuration you want in your server. It's a serverless compute service. You just upload your code and your code is executed. It's that simple, right? And also, like it's mentioned in the definition, and I told you guys again and again, it is used to execute background tasks. It is not used to deploy an application. Guys, this is the main difference between Elastic Beanstalk and AWS Lambda. So as an architect, you should know what the use case is and which service will suit it better. So moving on, now we've understood what AWS Lambda actually is and why do we use it, right? So let's move ahead to see how you can use this service. So you can use this service using the software development kits which are provided by AWS. So before moving ahead and understanding how you can use these kits, let's understand what these kits are all about. So the software development kits are basically APIs which are used by developers to connect to the desired service that they want. So it makes the life of the developer easy because he can now concentrate on the logical part of his application rather than wasting time on understanding how he can connect his code to the service which is there on AWS. Right. The other part is that these SDKs are used with IDEs, right? So currently we have only two IDEs which are supported. That is Eclipse and Visual Studio. So today in this session, I'm going to teach you guys how you can connect your SDKs with the Eclipse IDE. So let's do that. So before that, we're going to configure or we're going to code our AWS Lambda function in Java, right? And that is the reason we are using Eclipse. Now, first of all, you have to install Eclipse on your system. Once you do that, this is the Eclipse screen, guys. This is how your Eclipse dashboard will look like. So for installing AWS SDK on your Eclipse, you have to click on Help, and then you'll go to Install New Software. Once you have reached here, you'll enter the website name, that is aws.amazon.com/Eclipse. Once you have entered that, just hit enter and it will list you guys all the SDKs which are available, all the tools which are available. Select all the tools and click on finish, and then it will take some time to download the SDK, but then it will integrate everything into your Eclipse. And then you'll have a button like this over here, right? So with this button, you can actually deploy a new server which is configured according to AWS. So guys, this is how you install SDKs with IDE. Alright guys, so it's time for the demo now. Enough of theory. So what we'll be doing is, our aim is to create an application which will be uploading our files onto the S3 file system. And what our Lambda function here will be doing is, so like I told you guys, Lambda function basically executes your background task, right? So that we don't want to burden the server on which the website is hosted with this task. We want some other server to execute this task. What is this task? We basically want to get an email with all the details of the file which has just been uploaded on the S3 file system. So that email will be sent by the Lambda server. Now once we get that email, if we reply to that email that the file has to be moved, Lambda will pick up that email, it will read that email, and it will perform the necessary operation. So if we specify move, what it will basically do is it will pick that file, move it to some other bucket, and store it over there. So this is the project that we'll be doing right now. Sounds simple, right? But let me show you the architecture. Let me explain you what the architecture tells you. So basically this is our website. So what our website will be doing is, It'll be uploading a file onto the S3 file system. At the same time, it will also be making an entry into the SQS, which is nothing but a simple queue service which queues your data, right? So as soon as your file is uploaded onto S3, S3's bucket is configured in a way to invoke the Lambda function. Now, as soon as the Lambda function is invoked, now Lambda functions are stateless. They don't know anything about what file you have uploaded or what you have done. You have to feed them information. And that is the reason we have updated the entry in SQS of the file which has recently been uploaded, right? So what AWS Lambda will do is it will read this queue and will get the file name and will actually retrieve all the properties from that file name from S3. Now once it has retrieved all the file names, all the properties of that file, it will actually mail me with using the SES service in AWS the details of that file. Now once I receive the details of that file, I have an option to reply to that email, right? Now how will I reply to that email is like this. So I will open the email client on my computer and I will reply to that email. That email will actually go to that address which is actually pointed to my DNS server, and that DNS server will actually redirect that email to SES. Now SES on receiving that email has been configured to invoke the Lambda function. That Lambda function will be invoked. Again, the file will be read from the SQS. That file will be moved to a new bucket, and in the end that message will be deleted by SQS. Now my SQS has been configured like this, that in case I don't reply to that email within 2 or 3 minutes, that message will automatically be deleted from the queue. And in that case, if you try to move that file, you will not be allowed to do so because that file is no longer available in the queue, hence you cannot move it, right? So this is what our project is going to be all about. Now, I have already showed you how the project works. So let me quickly delete the project and again show you how it can be configured from scratch, right? So give me a moment. All right, so everything is set. Now the first thing that I'll be doing is I'll be configuring my S3 to interact with my Lambda function, right? So what I've not done is I've not deleted the Lambda function because there's no point. You just have to click next and your function will be created. What matters is the code. So I've uploaded the code in your LMS with the proper documentation. If you have any doubts, you can actually email me regarding that doubt and I'll clear it for you. So as an architect, your job will be to architect this architecture, not the coding. The coding part has to be done by the AWS developer, but it is a good to know knowledge, right? So that is the reason I've uploaded the code for the website and AWS Lambda to your LMS. So if you have any doubts, you can always ping me and I'll be happy to answer your queries. Okay, so like I said, I have to configure my S3 so that it can interact with AWS Lambda. Now my website's code is like this, that it'll upload the file to a bucket in S3 called Edureka demo, right? So what we'll be doing is we'll be going to the Edureka demo bucket, which is here. I'll click on the Edureka demo bucket. I'll click on properties. I'll click on events and let me delete this event right now, right? So I will be adding a notification now. Now let me call this notification as AWS-Lambda, right? Now what I want it to do is whenever the event is a put event, that is an upload event, I want it to send a notification to my Lambda function. So I have to select the Lambda function. So my function should be this one and I'll click on save. Let me check if everything has been filled. Yes, it has. So let's click on save. All right, so I have one active notifications now. Now you might get an error over here saying that you don't have sufficient permissions. So if you get that error, on the right hand side you'll have a button called add permissions. Just click on that button and everything will happen automatically. Basically those permissions are for your Lambda function. Your Lambda function may not have permissions to get notifications from S3, but once you click on that button you'll get the proper notifications automatically, right? So this is how you will configure your S3 bucket. Now let's go back to our slide to see what other things we have to do. So we have configured our S3 to invoke our Lambda function once a file is uploaded to S3. Now our Lambda has already been configured to interact with SES through the code, which is, so through the code it will be calling the SES service and will be giving in a mail. Now the next function or the next thing is to configure SES, or before that, let's configure our SQS, right? So our SQS is basically our simple queue service. So we have to create a queue in SQS in which our website will be uploading our files, right? So let's do that. Let us go back to our dashboard. So this is our dashboard, guys, and we'll go to the SQS service. We'll click on create new queue, FIFO queue, and that queue has to be named as hello-lambda. And since it's a FIFO queue, you have to give the extension as .fifo. All is done. Let's click on quick create queue. Okay, so my queue has now been created. Now I have to configure this queue so that whenever the message comes in, it gets automatically deleted after 2 minutes, right? So let us configure it. So we'll click on configure queue and we'll set this to 2 minutes. All right, all is done. Let's click on save changes. All right, so my queue has also been configured. Let me go back to my slide. All right, so my SQS has been configured now. So let me configure my SES now. Now this might be a little tricky, so hang on with me. We'll go back to the dashboard. We'll go to the SES service. Now first of all, in the SES service, you actually have to add the email addresses. Now how will you add the email addresses? You will actually have to verify a new email address. Now you have to verify the recipient as well. So since I want to receive the email from the SES service, I'll have to type in my email address, which is hemant@edureka.co, and we'll have to verify this email address. Now I'll receive a verification email on hemant@edureka.co. So let me quickly go back, click on inbox. Now I've got a verification request, right? So I'll click on this verification link. Okay, so my email address has now been configured, has now been verified. So it says congratulations. Awesome. So let me go back to my SES. It says pending verification. Let me quickly refresh it. All right, so it says verified now. Now let's go back to our slide. All right, so guys, we have configured the recipient of SES, but what about the sender, right? So we have to configure the sender as well, because and why do we have to configure the sender? And the sender has to be a domain name that you own, right? You have to own that domain name so that you can send emails via that domain name. Now what I mean by that is, you may say that, okay, why not use the recipient address only? Why not use hemant@edureka.co for sending the email? But our application also receives email, if you would have noticed, right? So for receiving the emails through SES, you have to actually own the domain name. Now since I'm an employee, I don't own edureka.co, right? So what I've done is, I have actually created a domain name. I can get a free domain name from this website, which is my.tk. You can go on this website and create a domain for yourself for free. So basically you will be getting this domain name free for 3 months. All right, I am almost on the expiry date, so I might have to renew it. Okay, but since this is a demo, let me quickly show you. All right, so I have actually created this domain name and I can use this domain name to send or receive emails. Now what I'll have to do, or how do I configure this in my SES is like this. So you will go to your SES, you see this tab which says email receiving, right? So you'll click on rule sets and you'll have to create a new rule set. Before that, you have to actually verify a domain. You basically have to verify that the domain is actually owned by you. Now how you will do that? You'll click on verify a new domain and you will give your domain name here, which is edureka.tk. Click on verify this domain and you will get these two records over here. Now where will you enter these two records is actually in the DNS server. So the domain name edureka.tk has to point to a DNS server, right? And in that DNS server, you will be putting in these two records. Now how will you point edureka.tk to a DNS server? So DNS server is basically Route 53, right? So we'll be configuring Route 53 with edureka.tk. Let me show you quickly how you can do that. Let me open my Route 53 service. So this is my Route 53 service. I don't have any hosted zones as of now. So let's click on get started now. Click on create hosted zone. So my domain name is edureka.tk, right? Click on create. Alright, so I have created a hosted zone now in my Route 53. Now what I'll have to do is I'll have to connect this domain to my Route 53. Now how will you do that? You will click on manage domain and you will click on management tools and you'll click on name servers, right? So these name servers have to be updated with the name servers provided you over here, right? So let me quickly show you. So you will copy this, paste it here. Remember guys, don't include the dot in the end, otherwise it will give you an error. So without the dot, copy the name server, right? So I'll first save to and see if it's working. Click on change name server. Alright, says changes saved successfully. Alright, so it's saving the servers now. So let me copy the rest too as well. Alright, so I've copied my name servers. I click on change name servers and fingers crossed. Okay, so it says changes saved successfully. Alright, so my domain name is now pointing to Route 53. Awesome. So now in Route 53, I have to include these records. Now how will I do that? Let me quickly show you. So you'll go to Route 53 and you will click on create record set. Now you don't have to type anything here. Just in the type, click on MX and in the value. So as you can see, there's a value for MX over here. Just copy this value and paste it here. Right, this is it guys. Nothing has to be done here. Click on create. Awesome. So I have a MX record now. Now we have to create one more record set and that name has to be like this, right? So I'll copy this part, paste it here. As you can see, now the name is underscore Amazon ACS dot edureka dot tk, and as you can see the name over here is the same, right? So this name has to be the same and the type of value is txt. We'll select txt from here and then you have to enter the value. So the value is this. Enter this value over here and click on create. Awesome. So my Route 53 is now configured to actually receive the emails from the edureka.tk domain. Cool. So we'll go back to our SES now, close it. It says pending verification, refresh it. Alright, so as you can see, my domain name is now verified. Alright, so let's just go to the rule sets now. So email receiving we have to configure. So I'll click on view active rule set. There is no rule set, so I'll create a rule. Now I have to specify a recipient, so let me specify hello@edureka.tk. Right, I'll click on add recipient. So my verification status is verified because my domain name is verified now. We'll click on next step. Now what action do you want it to do? Right, so if you receive email on this email ID, what do you want to do? So what we want to do is we want to invoke a Lambda function. Now what Lambda function do you want to invoke? I want to invoke my function 2 and we'll click on next step. So everything seems fine. We'll click on next step again. So it is asking me the role name. Let me give the role name as lambda-demo. Click on next step and click on create rule. Okay, so my rule set has now been enabled. Awesome. So I have configured my SES as well. So let me go back to my slide. Alright, so I've configured my SES, I've configured my Route 53, I've configured my AWS Lambda, I have configured my SQS, I've configured my S3, and my website is also configured. Right, so we created a SQS queue, so we may have to change the URL in our code. So let's quickly do that. We'll go back here, go to the dashboard, click on SQS. Alright, so this is our queue and this is our URL. So basically I have named the queue same, so if you do that, sometimes the URL don't change. So let me see if I have to upload the code or not. So I'll go to my Lambda function handler, go to the part where my queue is saved. Alright, let me anyways paste the queue over here. I think it is the same. Yes, it is the same. Anyways, let us save it. This is my function 1, so let me upload the code now. So it's my function and click on finish. Alright, so it is uploading the function right now. So meanwhile, let me go to my function 2 and configure in the queue address, which is this. Paste it here, Control S, save it. And once this process is complete, I will upload this code as well. So while this is uploading, let me change the address in my index file as well. This is my website's index file. So I'll go to the queue URL, which is this. I will change it, save it, and close it. Alright, so my website's address has also been done. Alright, so my code is uploaded for this function. Let me upload the code for function 2 as well, because we have made change. Upload function to AWS. So it is my function 2, that is my function 2 in Lambda. Click on next and click on finish. Alright, so my code is being uploaded. Let's wait a while so that my code gets uploaded and then we can proceed with our demonstration. Alright, so my code has now been uploaded to both my Lambda functions. Now what I'll do is I will go to my localhost website, click on refresh, and I will upload a file. So let me go back and see what is there in my bucket right now so that it becomes easier for us to verify that a file has been uploaded. So as of now, my bucket is empty, right? There's nothing in my Edureka demo bucket. And my other bucket is quarantine demo. This is the place where my other file will go, right? So let me empty this as well, so that we are clear that some object has been added. Alright, so this bucket has also been cleared. So we'll go to our local host, we'll choose a file, so let's upload some image. So let it be this image. Right, I'll click on open and click on upload image. Alright, so it says S3 upload complete. Alright, so let me check if a file has been added in my Edureka demo bucket. I'll click on refresh. Awesome, so one file has been added and it's called 149254609 Let me check in my email. So let me check if I got an email. So yes, I've got an email. Let me click on it. Alright, so this is the name of the file that I got, which is the same, right? So let me see if there is something in my quarantine demo bucket. So there's nothing there. I'll come back. Now I'll reply to this email as move. So this basically means move my file to some other bucket, and I'm replying it to hello@edureka.tk, right? So now we'll hit on send. So my message has been sent to route 53, which will be sent to SES, which will invoke the Lambda function, which will move my file to the other bucket. So let us check if that is done. So first, let us check if our Edureka demo bucket has been emptied. So we'll click on refresh. All right, so my Edureka bucket has now been emptied. Let's go back and check if anything has been added in my quarantine demo bucket. Alright guys, so my file has successfully moved to this bucket. Let us verify the name. So this is 149.254.6097. Let us check that in the email. So the email that we replied to had the object name as 149.254.6097. So this is the same file, guys. Alright guys, so we have completed our demonstration successfully. Any doubts, guys, in any of the part that we executed today? Any doubt, and I'll repeat it again, so please go ahead with the question. All right, so Mariana is saying thank you. You're welcome, Mariana. David is saying great demonstration. Awesome, David, you found it useful. Okay. Yes, the code is there in your LMS. You can go to it once we end the webinar. Alright guys, since all of you are giving me a go, let me conclude today's session. So thank you guys for attending today's session. I hope you learned something new today. We did a very elaborate demo, so I would suggest you to go back, listen to this recording which you'll have in your LMS, and do that project once on your own. Alright, if you have any doubts, you can always contact our support team, which is always at your disposal, and in case they can't solve your doubt, I am always there to help you, so you can email me, and whenever I'll have time, I will email you back with the solution. Alright, so guys, thank you for attending today's session. Have a good day ahead. Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed listening to this video. Please be kind enough to like it, and you can comment any of your doubts and queries, and we will reply to them at the earliest. Do look out for more videos in our playlist and subscribe to our Edureka channel to learn more. Happy learning!